according to me, there are five key ingredients to a good movie. If I have to categorize it into five broad categories, there will be, acting, directing, cinematography, and overall production value. So, before we start with this, the first point is it all starts with good writing, obviously. So, basically, we are talking about the screenplay here. So, what actually makes good writing? Like, screenplays are just the blueprint of cinema. Like, imagine cinema as your home or as a building. Imagine cinema as the building and the expectation of the audience as the members who live in the building. So if the building doesn't have a strong foundation, obviously it will fall due to any circumstance. It will fall. With it, the people in it may die or get injured. So basically, what I'm talking about is, if the cinema is a building and the expectations of the people are the residents who live in the building, if the foundation of the building is weak, which is if the foundation of the cinema or the film is weak, the expectations of the people will also be destroyed, as well as it will get killed. So basically, what is this foundation? This foundation is basically the screenplay of the cinema. So screenplay is basically, the blueprint. Like, without a script, how would a production design know that where to, cast the sets or what costume is needed? And while it's true that the directors have a vision of their own, but they also refer to the script sometimes to, move the story forward. And writing isn't just portrayed, or writing is more than just something written on a piece of paper. Writing can convey an entire story in a way which no one has imagined before. Like, you can include metaphors in it, or to you can include various symbolisms and themes in your writing to make a good story. And obviously, a good writing is one which makes you which is entertaining and which keeps you invested in the film. Like, there's something called a payoff in the script. A payoff is basically an element in the film which is put in the beginning of the film, and later on, when something is revealed, you connect the dots and you have a sense of satisfaction as to, you have come this long way. Like, for example, if there is a thriller movie and you want to guess who's the suspect, so you're along with the inspector, or police and detective, you're guessing along the way, and at the end, when they reveal who the killer or the suspect is, and the detective deduces that this happened, so I got to this point, and this is are basically the payoffs of the movie. So you feel a sense of satisfaction as to you also helped in the journey, and it's an overall win-win for both the director and also the audience. And so that is what makes a good writing, according to me. Now, what is the story structure and why it actually matters, I'll come to this later, because this is what screenplay actually consists about. The second point is directing with a vision. So obviously, like I said, a good director is the one who has a vision. Like, there are certain directors we talk about, like, let's say Satyajit Ray or Christopher Nolan, or any other director. They have a name of their own because they have a vision. They think in a way that no one has ever thought before, and they present it on the screen for the common audience. So that also plays a very important role. And obviously, editing obviously plays an important role, because there are some directors obviously who make the film and it stretches over, let's say, 3 or 4 hours even. Now, to keep the audience invested, the best a film can do is, pace it between 1.5 hours to 2 hours, during which the editing plays an important role, in which they compact certain scenes, or cut off scenes which do not add the overall impact, or alters the essence of the story. So a crisp editing also helps in creating a perfect movie. Coming to the third point, actor that brings the story to life. So what makes good acting? So obviously, acting is basically what the movie is all about, because the director can have a vision, the script can have a proper storyline. There is a proper set, there are proper costumes, but if there are no proper actors who can convey it to the audience, what's the point of making the film? So there are some actors who portray the film in such a way that you resonate with them, like you feel that it's happening in the real world, and it doesn't portray or come out as cringy or whatever. So that plays an important role in making a good actor. And obviously the role of casting is very important in this acting business, because there are certain directors who go with one particular actor only. For example, let's say Satyajit Ray has made over 35 films so far, and out of which 15 films, in 15 of his films, there is a Soumitra Chatterjee. So obviously there is a chemistry between them. That's why he's getting casted in every film that Satyajit Ray is making, and the audience is also liking the collab or the combination, and that is why the casting plays an important role. Like another example could be Wes Anderson is an director who generally portrays Bill Murray and Owen Wilson in his films. Coming to Quentin Tarantino, he generally portrays Samuel Jackson or Uma Thurman in his movies, because he resonates his story with these actors who can bring it to this screen. Coming to a recent example, Sanjay Leela Bhansali. He has directed three back-to-back hits, coming to Ram Leela, Padmavat, and Bajirao Mastani. And in every movie, there's the same actors, Ranveer Singh and Deepika Padukone. But still, the audience is enjoying this because of this chemistry and the way they're bringing the story forward. So obviously, actors are really important in the whole movie making process. Coming to the fourth point, which is the cinematography. So as ma'am said that if she doesn't like a particular scene or the first frame, she won't move forward. So that's another aspect which the director delves into. There's a certain aspect ratio in which the film is shot, and there are various color visuals and nuances which are applied in the film to convey several messages in the film. So if that is not captivating enough, there is no point in creating the movie forward. Along with the camera obviously plays a very important role in cinematography, it goes without saying. Coming to the last point, which is the production value that supports the scope of the film, sound design. So before any film comes out, the marketing generally relies on the soundtrack. The soundtrack comes first, which markets the film, and then the movie goes forward. So in this way, sound design is a very important aspect in creating a perfect movie, and obviously that's why the production value affects the overall quality of a film, because if the costume design, the sets and the settings and the camera and the like I said, background score isn't right or doesn't resonate with the audience will not watch the film. So by far these are the 5 points which actually make a good movie, which is the acting, directing, writing, cinematography, and the production value. So today I'm basically gonna talk about the screenplay, which is about the writing. So story design. Story design is basically what part of the story do you want to tell. Like maybe there is a character and there are thousands of hours of a character's life that you want to portray, but you have to pick a particular instance to tell the audience about, and you have to focus on that particular moment. If you have seen the movie A Star Is Born, which stars Lady Gaga, it is not about Jack's entire life, it is about how he overcomes his lowest point in life. It doesn't mean the audience or the director isn't interested in his backstory. All that is significant to his life is revealed to the audience, but at the end of the day, the story is all about how he made his entire journey and living, and how he overcame his lowest point in life. So basically, like the last line, a film is about a slice of life, not about life itself. So coming to the structure, like in the second point, I mentioned what is a story structure. So coming to that, A film is not just a collection of scenes, activities, dialogues. It is a series of events that happen in the specific order to incite emotions or feelings that the writer wants the audience to experience. So basically, the film structure is divided into three acts, which is called Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. So I'm gonna take an example of a particular movie through which I'll explain all these acts. So coming to that, I have a question like, how many of you have seen the movie Lakshya? It's a 2003 2004 movie starring Hrithik Roshan, Preeti Zinta, Amrish Puri, Boman Irani, and was directed by Farhan Akhtar. So, how many of you have seen the movie?
I have.
Who's this?
I'm Shamira.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's good. And yeah, like any other person has seen the movie. Okay, no problem. As ma'am has seen, we'll move forward with that. So basically, we'll talk about the three acts of the movie, and I specifically restricted to Lakshya only and tell the whole movie. Like I can tell the whole movie in three acts. So let's try doing that. So first is the Act One, which is in Act One, the setting or the story is introduced, the characters are introduced, there is a backstory, and there is a major conflict of the character which is portrayed in the film, which all constitute as Act One. So, coming to Laksh is the story of this guy whose name is Karan, who doesn't have any luck or aim in his life. Like all his friends are, have some goal or have some aim in their life. Even his girlfriend, which is Preeti Zinta, is into journalism and wants to become a successful journalist and has that aim. So, as you can see, that he doesn't have any aim, and so uh, I have three clips here. Like show this three clips to portray what basically the Act 1 was about. So just a sec.
मैं ऐसा क्यों हूँ 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 मैं जैसा हूँ मैं वैसा क्यों हूँ करना है क्या मुझको ये मैंने कब है जाना लगता है गाऊंगा जिंदगी भर बस ये गाना होगा जाने मेरा अब क्या कोई तो बताए मुझे गड़बड़ है ये सब क्या कोई समझाए मुझे अगर मैं कहूँ मुझे तुमसे मोहब्बत है मेरी बस यही चाहत है तो क्या कहोगी अगर मैं कहूँ मुझे तुमसे मोहब्बत है मेरी बस यही चाहत है तो क्या कहोगी
Yeah. So, did you hear the like? Can you hear the audio? Uh, was it audible?
Yes.
Yeah. So coming to these first two songs, the first song was Main Aisa Kyun Ho, which stated the state in which Hrithik Roshan actually was. Like, he was a character who was lost and didn't have any sense or direction in his life, and that's why the song was there to portray as to what he was actually feeling, and like what his current mental state at that point was, because all of his friends were doing something or the other. And the second song, Agar Main Kahun, was to state the relationship between Karan and his girlfriend, to show that even though he didn't have any aim in his life, his girlfriend loved him because of how he was as an individual, and that's what was everything for her. So this was the act one of the this was actually the act one of the film. So basically, like I said, there was an enticing incident, which is the song, and the two songs obviously are the enticing incidents, which introduce us to the settings. Like, it's in a normal setting, a middle class parents, and the characters are introduced. There's a certain backstory which is being told as to Karan was a guy who didn't have any aim in his life, and Preeti Zinta was, into journalism. Now coming to the major conflict or the enticing incident, which changes the entire turning point of Karan. So just a sec.
What is this? कल आए और आज फोन किया. Nice hairstyle. Anyways, कब तक हो?
मैं वापस ही आ गया.
क्या मतलब? तुम तुम छोड़ के आ गए? तुमने जिंदगी में एक फैसला अपनी मर्जी से किया और 4 ही दिन में हार मान ली. तुम्हारे पेरेंट्स परेशान थे, नाराज थे, मगर तुमने कहा कि ये मेरी जिंदगी है, मुझे क्या करना चाहिए मैं फैसला करूंगा. ये फैसला किया तुमने.
रोमी, तुमको जो बुरा लग रहा है मैं समझता हूँ, मगर
क्या समझते हो करण? याद है इसी जगह तुमने मुझसे कहा था कि तुम मुझसे शादी करना चाहते हो. शायद वो इरादा भी बदल गया हो.
ये क्या कह रही हो तुम रोमी?
और क्या कहूँ? जिसके दिल में अपने लिए कोई इज्जत नहीं, अपने फैसले की कोई इज्जत नहीं, वो मेरी क्या इज्जत रखेगा?
रोमी, तुम मेरी बात...
Just don't touch me. करण, मुझे नहीं लगता कि अब मैं तुमसे कभी मिलना चाहूंगी.
So yeah, that was a pretty emotional heavy scene. So what basically happened was, Karan talked to one of his friends, and the friend said that he wanted to join the army. So as Karan didn't have any aim in his life, he wrote the test and he joined the Indian Military Academy, but the training is very rigorous and is very hard. So after 3-4 days he ran off, and he came back. So that's when this scene happens. So basically this was the turning point as to a guy who was carefree, who didn't have any goal in his life, and you know was just free spirited, suddenly had an aim to prove himself. Like, his parents also thought that he was a good for nothing, and that he would eventually return back, and that exactly what's happened. And then the girlfriend, said that we should not talk anymore, and she goes away. So that concludes Act 1, because that's a major turning point in the life of the character of Karan, because from here onwards there's no turning back. There's a major incident of the story which will proceed further. So coming to the Act 2, what happens is that he rejoins the army, and he enrolls in the army. So basically that whole crux forms the Act 2. So mm, so this was the Act 1, like, and yeah, obviously, like, you should obviously, like, he was in the army, so that's why his hairstyle changed. But coming to the terms of the character that Hrithik Roshan portrayed in Act 1, is a carefree guy. It was showing like how the hairstyle was, the clothes he wore, and the way he talked. But suddenly in Act 2, there's a change. Like you saw in the final scene which I shown, he had a haircut, and now he's looking. He's actually looking like a guy who has a Laksh in his life. So Act 2 is generally basically about the journey of the character. Like, this is what the film is actually about. There are obviously conflicts and obstacles that the character is caught off guard, due to which there is a certain events which occur, and then you have to find the midpoint of the story, which is a major change, and the learning ends, and the character steps forward. So coming to Laksh, the midpoint of the story was the fact that Karan eventually passes the Indian military academy, and he becomes Lieutenant Karan. So that's the major midpoint of the story. There's a gradual shift from a guy who's good for nothing, from a guy who goes to the army, and then he comes back, and he then again joins the army, and finally he becomes a lieutenant. So that's the midpoint of the story. And there's a turning point again at the Act 2. The character loses something. There's a low point, there's a calm before the storm, and there's something to learn about themselves. So here the turning point was the fact that his girlfriend got engaged to someone else. uh, so that was kind of like a very emotional moment for him, and this actually enabled him to focus all his energy into the army, which led him to become a lieutenant. So the coming scene which I'll show basically forms the crux of Act 2.
रिजल्ट आ गया।
हाँ यही रास्ता है तेरा, तूने अब जाना है। हाँ यही सपना है तेरा, तूने पहचाना है। हाँ यही रास्ता है तेरा, तूने अब जाना है। हाँ यही सपना है तेरा, तूने पहचाना है। तुझे अब ये दिखाना है। रोके तुझको आंधियां, क्या जमीन और आसमां पाएगा। जो लक्ष्य है तेरा, लक्ष्य था
Yeah, so that is in a crux the whole of Act 2. Like you saw, there was a major change in the way he thought and the way he acted. He's now more focused, more determined into reaching to his goal, which is to become an army officer and fight for the army. So that forms the whole crux of Act 2. So now coming to the last act, which is the final act, Act 3. So Act 3 is basically where characters try to come back to the comfort zone. The journey now has changed the character, therefore, he can't retreat. The final push to reach the goal intended in the beginning, climax, the culmination of the journey, does the character succeed in the goal or not, and aftermath, introspecting of the character, looking back at what has changed due to the journey, external or internal. So, taking the example Lakshya only, so what happens further is he trains in the army, and the story moves forward, and eventually joins the army. And during those time, it was basically not it basically revolved around the Kargil war. Like it's not mentioned in the story, but it is assumed that the story was about the Kargil war, and obviously it was between the control of the LOC where India and Pakistan were fighting, and Pakistan had occupied parts of the LOC, and Indians were fighting to free that land and remove the Pakistanis from that area. So what the film does next is, puts Karan in a situation where he goes and fights of the enemy, which is obviously the Pakistanis, and there he eventually changes as a person. He succeeds as an individual. His parents are also very proud of him as to what he has truly become. Yes, like in the film, there was a point in which there was a peak of a mountain in which the Pakistanis had captured that peak, and it was very difficult for the Indians to get to that, because if they got to that peak, it would have been a strategical advantage for them, and technically they would have won the war. So now, the Laksh of Karan was to reach to that peak and hoist the Indian flag. So that's what the film is about. The Laksh is changing. First, he wanted to, do something which others are also doing. Karan wanted to do something just because others were doing that same thing. Secondly, he wanted to do something because his girlfriend rejected him, so he joined the army. Third Laksh was to finally become a lieutenant, and the last Laksh was, hoisting the Indian flag at the top, and to get a sense of satisfaction, and to have that feeling of victory as to he has succeeded. So the last act is all about that. Like he fights off the enemies, a few of his friends also dies, but eventually he goes and he hoists the flag. So coming to the act three,
पहुंच गए हमारे लड़के वहां, पहुंच गए।
So at the end of the day, that's the film. Film is what is all about, and he eventually reconnects with his family, and his girlfriend obviously comes back to him because he's finally found the love of his life and is now ready to move in with him. So yeah, that was quite an emotional scene, even if you haven't seen the film and you have just watched the scene. So, ma'am, as you said that you had watched the film, did you watch the film in the theaters?
No, not really.
Yeah, yeah.
It
So,
was telecasted in the broadcasted in TV, so I've
okay,
seen there.
yeah. So, coming to this point, Lakshay was actually a box office failure. Like, people didn't go to the theaters to watch the movie, and it was a critical failure. So, like, for me personally, it is one of the most perfect films I have ever watched. Coming to the acting is top notch. Coming to the writing, it's very well written. It's in the three acts. The cinematography is excellent because I guess it was shot in 2003 or 2004, and it was the first time the such an intensive use of the cameras were done, and that's the third aspect, the overall production values, the locations, and the providing that entire army environment, and finally and the soundtrack, obviously the victory instrumental by Shankar Ehsaan Loyes obviously is will obviously make you feel patriotic, and will obviously you shed some few tears along the way. And directing, obviously, I guess Farhan Akhtar is one of the underrated directors I've ever seen. He has a vision which other directors don't have, and like he has a unique way of portraying the story. Like I'm actually quite sad that he chose acting over direction, because made with Dil Chahta Hai or Lakshya or even Dawn, he has a certain way of presenting the story which resonates with me at least. So Lakshya is for me a perfect film. So that's why I presented it. But coming to the fact that why it was a box office failure, like if I wanted to give a few reasons, it could be due to the fact that the film was basically a tale of two halves. If you see, the first half was obviously about how Karan was as an individual, and it was a carefree story. It was a love story between Karan and his girlfriend, and he didn't have any luck in his life, and the whole world revolved around that. The second half, however, was a fuller war film. It basically was about the Indo-Pakistan situation, and it focused on that war film. So some people like the first half, while some people like the second half. So overall, coming to the film, people didn't like it. So that was one of the reason. Second reason was due to the fact the movie was marketed. So coming to 2004, मैं ऐसा क्यों हूँ was the first song which was publicized. अगर मैं ये कहूँ was the second song which was publicized, but there was no publicized of the fact that there was something war related in the film. Like people weren't prepared for it actually, so that's why they're disappointed. Like I guess people wanted more of a love story or masala action film, which Lakshya was not. Because even if you see Lakshya in today's times, it feels like a timeless film. Like if you watch Lakshya in today's time, it doesn't feel like a 2003 or 2004 film. It can also look like a 2018 film. Such was the way the film was shot. So that was one of another reasons why the film didn't work well at the box office. The third and the main reason was the audience. Like obviously the film can have all the good elements in it, but if the audience doesn't resonate to it, the film is bound to be a failure. Like coming to the audience of 2003 2004, it's been 17 18 years, and I guess I was 4 years old back then. So obviously the taste of the audience has eventually grown and evolved. Coming to 2003 or 2004, there was a major focus on the commercial aspect and the masala films. Like if I remember correctly, in 2004, films like Hum Tum, Main Hoon Na, Veer Zara, Dhoom, and even Masti were the films which were treated well by the audience because it was a fun-loving film and people resonated with it. And Lakshya was a film which didn't come under this category, and so it was discarded by the audience. Another such film in 2004 which released and was a box office failure was Swadesh. Like Swadesh is one of SRK's best film I've ever seen, but it was a box office failure due to the same reason. So coming to the fact that now if you compare those films, if you take it in today's times, it will be box office failures and Lakshya and Swadesh will obviously be successful. So eventually the taste of the audience has also changed. So there's no such hard and fast rule that these are the five or six elements which make a cinema good. Obviously the mindset of the audience also plays an important role in this. But coming to Laksh, like if I remember correctly, the film was shot in 2004, as I said. 15 years later, Farhan Akhtar actually went to the Indian Military Academy to visit it. So 70% of the cadets said that they joined the academy because they saw Lakshya and it inspired them. So I guess there cannot be more success a film can get than this. Like box office failures and hits are a part of money making, and it's a part of life. But if someone has watched the film and joined the Indian Military Academy just because they've watched Laksh, I guess that's a success. I don't need to say more about it. So yeah, so that's what the whole filmmaking is all about, and that's the first aspect which I just talked about, to the three acts and what the film was all about. So yeah, as you can see here, he's getting instructions from his commander to go into the war. Here he's dressed as to camouflage in his surroundings and to face the enemy, and finally at the end he goes to the top and he places the flag, and that's the end of the film. So this is the way I'll structure a film in three acts. So coming to the next point, which is the conflict. So basically a film doesn't work if there's no conflict. You need drama in film, or it will not. Even in life you actually need drama in your life to have some spice in your life, to say like you people obviously don't like a monotonous life. They want something exciting or happening things surrounding them. So coming to the conflicts, there are basically these are not the only ones. There are more also. But if I have to categorize conflicts, it can be character versus self, which is the backstory of the character, which is basically what Lakshya was all about. As I said, Lakshya was all about rediscovering himself as a person and moving forward in his life. The backstory played an important role. Character versus character, which is the antagonist, like the protagonist and the antagonist, the basic formulaic structure that a film follows. And character versus society, कि लोग क्या सोचेंगे, समाज क्या कहेगी. This is the phrase which is used in films depicting character versus society, or character versus technology, which is mobile or internet. See the films like um, Terminator franchise. There is a artificial intelligence system called Skynet, which eventually leads to the destruction of the human race. Such was the impact of Skynet that it has an ability to destroy the human race. So that was a character versus technology conflict. Coming to character versus nature, which is a terrain, tsunami, or earthquake. I guess everyone must have heard of the film 2012. We all must have thought the world must have been ending. So that was a film which generally portrayed the conflict between character versus nature, and finally character versus supernatural, ghost, or any other horror story. So internal versus external conflict. A meaningful conflict is necessary. It is not a coincidence, and this is one of the most famous lines I've ever heard. Antagonist doesn't always have to be evil. Like coming to the fact, a protagonist and antagonist is basically how the audience perceives it as it is. Like in a film called The Prestige, there are two characters who are both considered as evil. Like they're competing with they're magicians and they're competing with each other. But coming to the overall essence of the story, you can also portray it as fun as the protagonist as one as the antagonist. Like, if you're not resonating with this example, I can give another classic example. Like, coming to the Mahabharata, there's a war between Pandavas and Kauravas. So, coming to the fact, people generally have the notion that Pandavas are the good side and Kauravas are the wrong side. Like, Pandavas are the protagonist and Kauravas are the antagonist. But actually, like, I always have a different opinion to this, and for me it's quite the opposite. For me, the protagonist were the, not exactly protagonist, the antagonists were the Pandavas, and Kauravas were actually the victims. Like, eventually, coming to the whole story, whatever happened in the whole Mahabharata, the I do not see Chorus as the antagonists. They had their own reasons, and they had been wrong. Coming to Krishna also playing a huge role into favoring the Pandavas due to which they looked as the protagonist. But there are some stories which depicts Krishna as the villain also. So there is a book. Coming to this, there is a book called The Roll of Dice by Anant Neelakantham. So he is a writer who generally writes from the perspective of the antagonist. So I guess it gives you a unique perspective. And at the end of the day, there's, like I said, there's no protagonist or no antagonist. It's up to the viewer. So coming to the fact, a story event creates meaningful change in the life situation of a character that is expressed and experienced in terms of a value, and it is achieved through conflict. Like, a story event is bland without a conflict. That's what it is all about. So coming to another case of a conflict, like, imagine that outside your window it's 1980s Africa. There's a great drought happening, or a plague which has struck, and there's no food all around, and people are dying, animals are dying, and you have to these are all the negatives which I'm talking about, so you have to change it to positive. So how do you make it to positive? Rain is something which will eliminate the plague. So, however, as powerful this event would be, it still does not qualify as a story event because it happened by coincidence. Rain finally fell in East Africa, but there was no drama. Like, what would you make a film about this? Like, it would basically be like a documentary which will be used in schools, and students and the teachers will both yawn and will have some learning experience, and that's it. There is no such takeaway as such, which you can take away, which you can take from this film if it is made. Coming to another situation, imagine the same situation. Imagine there's a plague and there's no rain happening, and suddenly there's a man who comes to your place, and he says that I'm a person, and I have the ability to bring down rain. Like, I have instruments with me and I can help in creating rain. You have to give me some cash and I'll make sure that rain happens. And the character is a layered character because he also has self doubts within himself, because until now he hasn't brought down rain to a place, and eventually he's asking people to give him money, and there's a sense of guilty feeling also in him, because he's leeching of people's hard-earned money. But what happens is, finally one day he does the same to another family and he goes away, but at the end of the day rain actually happens, like rain occurs. Now that is also coincidence, mind you, that's also coincidence. But here, the story is achieved in the form of the guy. The guy is now content and is satisfied as to, like, he now believes that, that he can create rain, and that's what the whole story was about. Like, discovering about oneself, and realizing what one can do. This, what I said just now, is nothing but a film called The Rainmaker, which is adapted from a play by Richard Nash, and it was made in 1956. So coming to the picture, this is the guy which I was talking about. He has a drum with him, and as you can see, he has a drum which is a sign of a thunder. So he said that if I beat the drum, thunder will occur. And this is the family which he conned into taking money, and finally the story progresses like this, and at the end rain actually occurs, as you can see, and you can see the guy is very happy. you can see the content on his face because it's finally achieved. Rain has come. That's the conflict. It was a conflict because he had self doubt within himself that whether he'll be ever will be able to bring rain or not. But finally, he did bring rain, and so that's what conflict is all about. The story progressed from that to this to that, and finally, the rain came. And as the audience, also, I'm very satisfied because it actually happened. Like I watched the film recently, and I had a wonderful experience watching it. I'll definitely recommend you to watch this film. Like it's basically a rom-com, and yeah, it had its moment, and it's a, like I said, a good film. So coming to another aspect, which is tension and suspense. Like imagine bomb under a table, or a character is in adversity. So you have to stretch the conflict as far as possible to make the story more enticing, and so that the character so that the audience is invested in the story. Because if the tension is only of a few seconds, the characters if the tension is only of a few seconds, the audience will generally lose interest in the story, and will not watch the rest of the film. However, if there is a certain build up to a story, and finally there is a tension, there's a suspense, there's a conflict with along with the story, the audience will obviously be invested in the story as much as possible. And that's what good filmmaking is all about. That's what the screenplay is all about. The screenplay should have the tension and suspense. The screenplay should include the conflicts. The screenplay should include the proper act structures, that this is the act 1, this is the act 2, this is the act 3. So screenplay plays a very important role, in determining that how the story will move forward. So by here I come to the first half of my presentation. I'll continue. Just give me a second. So coming to the second part, which is mission scene. Like it's basically observed mostly in stage plays. Basically, mission scene literally translates to placed on the scene. So as you can see, the settings, the decor, the props, the hairstyle, the costumes, the lighting, the makeup, the acting, all constitutes to mission scene. So now you may ask that how is it related to cinemas? As in, I'm watching. This is basically mise scene is basically a concept which is used in stage plays, and it's a French word. Like basically, a stage play is live. You can't edit in a stage play. So what will you do? You arrange the settings and the costumes and everything in such a way that everything is done at the brisk pace and everything is conveyed to the audience. There is no need to edit it as such, and the audience understands the whole story. That's the beauty of stage plays. So basically, like I said, the mise scene consists of the settings, the props, the set design, the lighting, the color, the costumes, and the actor movement. So mise scene in films is it basically sets the time period, location, and the style of the film. Science fiction uses props to build its own world, and the later points I'll come to the end. So see, structure the scene. So this is a scene from the film A Clockwork Orange, which is directed by Stanley Kubrick, and it focuses on a story which is represented in this first scene. So if you can see, I would like to ask anyone of you, like, what do you see in this? Like, anyone can tell or like write in the chat box, like, what can you infer from this scene as such? Anyone? Like, I'll show the image again. What can you observe from this picture? Like, whatever comes to your mind, one word or two words, or you can even unmute, or you can write in the chat box. If you see this picture, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? Anyone? Statue or some sort of factory. Okay. Anyone else?
Maybe a dream.
A dream. Okay. Anything else? A dream, a statue house. Anyone else wants to try? Themed restaurant or a bar? Yeah. So yeah, that's your interpretation of it basically, and yeah, it's fair enough because I didn't say what it's about, and it's fair enough to make a guess. But if you look closely at the scenes, what do you observe? You observe one, two, three, four, five people sitting or sitting there, and here is some statues of ladies who are naked. Okay, and they are placed in provocative and they're placed in provocative structures so that it gives out a very wrong message. So that's what's the mindset of like a clock basically. Before I start, I should say a Clockwork Orange is basically a film about a guy called Alex, which is this guy in the middle who is basically a psychopath, and he kills, rapes women, kills people, and steals from the houses of people, and does everything without a conscience. And one day this is his crew, and one day his crew abandons him because he is very arrogant as such, and the police catch him. The police place him in a mental health facility where they do experiments on him, and the experiments were conducted on him to make sure that he doesn't commit these crimes again, due to which he doesn't commit the crimes again. But what happened, the experiments which were conducted on him were very severe and very violent, due to which the experiment failed actually. Like what happened was, now it became kind of a disease to this guy. Like if someone mentioned the thought of killing someone or stealing from a house to him, he actually fell ill. He actually felt that he couldn't breathe. Like the experiment, that's why failed, because it created such a mental torture in his mind that all the thoughts of which he had in the previous scenes of killing or stealing were gone, and he was actually afraid of that, and was scared of it. So that's what the film is all about. Coming to this scene, it's basically, if I have to say, like talked about the film. So coming to that, if I have to describe this scene is basically, five psychopaths sitting in such a way, and Stanley Kubrick is a director who has a vision of his own. This statues are nothing but sexual imagery. He wants to portray it through that these guys does not do not respect women as such, and they treat women merely as objects, and they have no value in the society. So that's what the scene is all about. Now, if we see the scene in actual sense,
You're muted, Anubhav.
Yeah. So like I would like to show another scene along with this.
Hotel set. We'll be landing in Los Angeles in about 20 minutes. Do you need immigration forms?
Thank you.
Hotel set.
Oh, no.
Do you need immigration forms?
You saw the first scene of the Clockwork Orange, which I showed along with the picture, and this was the scene of the Inception, which I showed. If I have to ask you to present a difference between the two scenes, like what comes to your mind first? Any difference? Did you notice any difference, or like whatever comes to your mind? There's no right or wrong answer in this. You can type if you want. What is that one difference you can notice between the two scenes?
There's a confusion in the second one when the facial expressions of the people
Mhm.
see. There's some
Coming to the camera
confusion.
work, I'm basically talking about the camera work, like what basically different was there. If
Ah,
you, yeah, yeah. So anyone wants to try? It's very easy actually. Like if you come to think about it later. Sorry, anyone wants to try? All
in the
right.
beginning, I mean, if I may just try.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
in the beginning, usually the individual faces have been covered in the second scene. Where the first four people were taken in three or four. We started from a single face and then we saw everyone together.
yeah.
Then the next scene, every individual face were shown.
Exactly. That's actually the right answer. So great observation, ma'am. So coming to the first scene, if you that's an example of a missing scene. Like I said, missing scene is basically used in stage plays, and you can't do editing in stage plays. So if you come to use that in films, it is shown in such a way that the camera takes the entire picture or the frame in a single take, and everything is displayed. Coming to the Inception, as ma'am perfectly noticed, the character of Leonardo, which is Cobb, is waking up, and then the scene is actually cut, and then it moves on to another phase to which is of his fellow member, and then it comes back to Leonardo again, and then it moves back to some other people, and it comes back to him, which gives you a sense of understanding that what Leonardo is feeling as an individual, the others are also resonating with him. So this is what we call as a montage. This is not a missile scene. A montage is basically where you use edits as such. So that's the major difference between a missile scene and a montage, which I wanted to say. Like you can either tell your visual story through one frame or through combination of frames. Missile scene can be used to tell the entire story through one shot with minimal editing. Montage style uses editing to put across the message of a scene. So missile scene example was a Clockwork Orange, like I showed. Montage example was Inception, like I showed. Another example of missing scene, if I may show. Yeah. So like I showed, both the Shining is basically a horror movie which is again directed by Stanley Kubrick, and in which in the first scene if you see the boy is sitting playing with the toys, and suddenly there's an ominous background score, and then the scene moves forward in one take to show that there's some danger around. That you can see the door was half open. So that's another scene of missing scene. Coming to the next scene, that's also part of The Shining. Jack Nicholson is typing in his typewriter, and the camera is coming from back to the front, and it creates a creepy situation. Like the settings also plays an important role in the missing scene. Like for example, in the second scene, the setting which was used was very haunting and ominous. If you replace it with an say an office space, it would not have the same effect. So the sound effects, the background score, the costumes, everything together plays an important role in creating a perfect shot. So that was an example of message scene. So basically, like the talk about the quirks of directors. Stanley Kubrick is a director who is a message scene kind of director who generally likes to take his shots in a single take to tell his whole story. Coming to Inception, as you all know, it's directed by Christopher Nolan. So Nolan is a director who masters in the montage filmmaking. Like if generally wants to convey his story through editing and the cuts. So those are the basic quirks of individual directors. So like imagine if someone tells you that Inception is directed by Stanley Kubrick, or Shining is directed by Nolan. What change would that affect in the film? Obviously, the entire film will be changed because coming to the Clockwork Orange, if we take the scene, if we imagine Nolan directing it, it will not be one scene coming from backward to front. Nolan will focus more on the individual characteristics of a person. He'll stop at a particular frame, and then he'll convey a story through that way. So that is an important aspect which filmmakers keep in mind. And I guess just close, nothing more. This is an example of Blade Runner. Like yeah, just a sec. So, like I said, that the missile scene sets the atmosphere for the film. The misty, smoky New York town in Taxi Driver, or the clean, futuristic city in Horror. The kind of lighting and color can also define the mood of the film and the costumes also. So, coming to this film, this is the still from the Blade Runner 2049, and this is the still from the Matrix. If even if you don't know, even if you haven't watched the movie, and if you compare the scenes, this looks futuristic and doesn't look of our time period. So this conveys that this film is not of our time but is of the future. Coming to this scene, this is a film, this is the film called Psycho. Okay, so coming from the title also you can guess that Psycho is a film about a guy who's mad and is a serial killer. So you can see birds strung all around, and it's giving a haunting atmosphere. From this picture you can tell that this guy is deranged, or isn't somebody you would like to spend your time with. And this is an scene from the movie Her, which is all about this guy falling in love with an artificial intelligence system, which eventually proves that love has obviously no boundaries. So this is a futuristic setting. So this whole missile scene gives the overall feel of the movie, and like I said, it is very different from montage. However, there is no such scene which is completely missing scene or completely a montage. Both of the quirks are there in a particular scene, but what happens is that one factor eventually dominates over the other, and that's why you term a particular scene as a missing scene or a particular scene as a montage. Coming to the last point, commissioned versus spec screenplays. Commissioned screenplays are those which are written by authors that producers hire for a specific show or franchise. Speculative script is an unsolicited screenplay that you write in hopes of selling. So basically, in layman's term, if I have to classify it, a commissioned screenplay is one which is written for TV shows, and a spec screenplay is one which is written for movies. Obviously, both of these screenplay which will be different because generally movies have a conclusion and end. Coming to the TV series which have scripts, it's very important that they have a strong pilot or a first episode so that the audience will be interested in further episodes. And also, if they're planning on having consecutive seasons, they should end it on a cliffhanger, or on something which is unsatisfying for the viewer, and they come for the next season. So that's a major difference between a commission screenplay and a spec screenplay. And yeah, that's it. Thank you guys. You all have been a wonderful audience. Thank you for having me as a guest. I hope you enjoyed the presentation and could have and um, take have some takeaway from the what I just displayed. And I hope, like, next time if you're watching a film, these are some of the things which will strike in your mind, and you'll have a wonderful cinematic experience watching it. So yeah, thank you.